The events industry is turning to virtual events to face the crisis generated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the massive cancellation of physical events. Events Case wanted to support the industry by doing what it does best, putting technology at the forefront. You can now run virtual or hybrid events in minutes. There are no delays and no technical complications as we offer top-notch customer support along the way. With the new Smart TV interface in Events Case's Agenda module for both the web and the event app, event participants can access different virtual sessions with ease. As the event organizer, you simply need to add the link of your favorite streaming or video conference supplier within each session. Adding a link enables the play button for each session. Interaction amongst online attendees is also possible since the Events Case platform supports Q&A, chat and surveys in real time. Albeit from a distance, networking is still fully supported within Events Case through the new video link function in our one-to-one meeting scheduler, as well as through private messages, news feeds and forums. Events Case is an easy-to-use, global, modular, multi-language and secure event management software. Discover all our products at www.eventscase.com.
Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth episode of the Event Tech Talk Show, a new live broadcast brought to you by Event Tech Live. Our next event is Event Tech Live US and Canada, and that'll take place on June the 8th and 9th. For more information on that event and how you can get involved, please visit eventtechlive.com. We are actively looking for fabulous speakers, so if you are passionate about event technology or events in general and you want to get involved in either a solo presentation, a panel presentation or a case study, go to eventtechlive.com, click on the call for papers at the top and please do apply. Now, if you missed last week's episode, which was episode 3, where I interviewed Marco Ghiberti and Denzel Rankin, we looked at the launch of their new book, Reinventing Live, and you can actually now watch that podcast back on YouTube or actually listen to the audio version on all of the major podcasting networks, including Apple, Spotify and Google Podcasts. And we've made it really simple. You can actually just type in Event Tech Talks with a plural, that's talks.com, and that'll take you right back to the archive so you can look at all the past episodes. A quick thank you to our sponsor again, Events Case, who's sponsoring all 21 episodes of the Event Tech Talk Show. They are Europe's largest event management software provider. So if you're in the market for a virtual or hybrid event tech platform, please do go check them out at eventscase.com. Today, my guests are Dahlia El Gazzar of Dahlia Plus Agency based in the States and James Morgan, course leader in tourism and events management at the University of Westminster here in the UK. Today, Dahlia and James will be discussing how we design events, build events, and use technology to deliver those engaging online events. So please feel free to interact and ask questions in the comments, and I'll bring those on screen and put them to Dahlia and James. Now, in previous episodes, we've had a few people that have commented on Facebook and we've not been able to see their picture and their name. We want to do that as long as you do, and we want to be able to bring you on screen, give you your own airtime, but also be able to actually call you by your name. So StreamYard says that if we ask you to go to streamyard.com/Facebook, then StreamYard will ask you to access your Facebook name and picture. Once you've accepted, then your name and picture will come in as part of your comments and for any future episodes that you want to kind of get involved. So do ask questions. If we don't get a chance to answer some of your questions, we'll try to follow up on Twitter using the hashtag EventTechTalks. So James, Dahlia, welcome to the Event Tech Talk Show.
You. Hi.
So Dahlia, before we actually jump into today's topic, yesterday it was International Women's Day, and you are the lead ruckus maker on a great movement, Women in Event Tech. Can you just give us a little overview about what is Women in Event Tech, who is involved, how can people get involved?
Absolutely. So yes, yesterday was International Women's Day to celebrate our big and small wins and women in our industry. And it should not be only one day. So I say we celebrate them every day, every moment. So we're going to do that. Women in event tech is, we have a mission. Our ethos, as someone named it, is we empower, we educate, and we lean on each other. So this is for everybody females only at the moment. So with due respect, And basically, it's for us, whether it's for people that have an idea on a cocktail napkin, they are working within event tech, or they know how to speak event tech, whether they know they do or not, because there are people out there that do that. And it's for us to continually educate ourselves as well as lift each other up, and also lean on each other in the sense of, for those that are terminated, furloughed, looking for projects, we help each other out that way. We have a Facebook group right now, which is Women in Event Tech. We also have, we're also on LinkedIn, and we have a Slack channel for those that get approved to be part of it. And we have monthly meetups. So I think we're around 800 right now.
That's amazing. And we'll be doing some stuff at Event Tech Live US and Event Tech Live UK, getting those people together. You actually delivered a fantastic kind of networking get together, didn't you, at Event Tech Live in November? That's one of the pictures we've got screenshotted for kind of marketing literature and stuff. So
yeah, and thank you for supporting us. So
no, we as an event organizer, I think we are arguably more women than we are men. So, Event Industry News, Event Tech Live, we are powered by very strong independent females as well. So why won't we support it?
Thank you.
So to get into today's topic, designing online events, we've seen so many online events happen over the last sort of 12 months or so. Some fantastic, some not so great. And there's a lot of conversation about the methodology that goes behind delivering online events, what works physically, does that translate online? And, I've seen a lot of mistakes, me personally, where technology, the platform actually seems to become the first tick box that everybody's looking at when it comes to putting events together. I'm going to start with you, James, because as the lecturer of all these new event management students coming out of the University of Westminster, you're right in the thick of it, teaching people how to go about this. So from your experience, James, what's the methodology that you teach around how to design events? And is online events part of that curriculum now that we're kind of seeing an explosion of these?
Online and digital hybrid is definitely part of that. But the same principles apply, Adam. So at the beginning of the process, you are looking at your event objectives. What are those exactly? And you have to take a step back for that and say, well, what's the behavior change that this event is aiming to achieve in the audience? I mean, if it's a fun event, it's going to be about having a laugh, and then they come away with some good memories and some brand recognition, for example. That would be the behavior change. Or if it's a sales kickoff for a conference, it's going to be, will people change their working practices and their working flows and the way they do things to get more sales? So that behavior change comes before the next bit, which is the engagement strategy to actually affect that behavior change. And then you can start setting your objectives. And I think that's the important part, is to think of behavior change, engagement strategy to create that change, and then formulate your objectives.
And Dahlia, you've been advising so many people over the last 12 months. I know we've seen it on the WhatsApp, we've discussed it off air, on air, what's the methodology from your side? Because you're not coming from the Westminster, you're just coming from that raw, real life experience, right? Like, so what's it, how do you advise in terms of going about designing the online events?
The first thing I say is no. So when someone comes and says, oh, let's, take and replicate and duplicate our face-to-face and put that virtually, the answer is no. And the reason for that is, when you do that, there's a certain number of expectations that you are putting in place, whether you know it or not, especially with your stakeholders, especially with your attendees and your sponsors and your exhibitors, where it won't make sense in a virtual world. And it's just going to continue that way. If you keep wanting to say, I'm replicating my face-to-face, I'm going to duplicate this, or let it or some aspects of the face-to-face need to translate in hybrid or virtual. Those three words need to die like pivot needs to die. So if you want to reset, if you want to refresh, you have to look at and this goes with James, what he's saying in regards to who are your stakeholders, because now we have had a year where we have new audiences. Therefore, you cannot replicate for them. They're first timers. How are you going to replicate for them? You have to redesign, refresh, reset how you think of events on your expectations, on the desires and goals for each stakeholder, as well as for your organization, and then deliver on that. The engagement part is key, but more so than anything, the definitions of what's hybrid, what's an event anymore. The term exhibitor might not even translate into a virtual world. So this is where you need to reset and look at your events, not one-offs. It has to be an entire cycle of experiences. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But I guess to throw a little caveat back there at you,
yeah,
the pandemic was something that nobody planned for, and digital events were thrust upon them with, in some cases, not much time at all to pivot. And I've taken my sign down for you as well, Dahlia.
Okay.
Can we honestly say people had the opportunity to try something new, having probably previous sponsors, previous stakeholders, an expectation as well about the format of the event, and also not the freedom to try anything new, because it was kind of, you've got to fit in this box. We've got to do this because that's what we did last year.
Yeah. So the idea of trying something new, they were trying something new, but it's also because it was forced. And right now we're at a point where we have the luxury, if we can take a global pause as an event professional to design better with people's expectations and design intentionally. That's a Tahira and Dean word, by the way. Intentionally design your events, then you won't be trying to, it's not the hamster wheel anymore. You're actually putting thought in it and not designing within the boundaries of a tech platform as we were trying to do with clients in 2020. Now we need to be a little bit more strategic and about the engagement part, about the content and the delivery and the experiences, rather just than let's duplicate a face-to-face.
I agree with Dahlia, yeah. I think duplicating can be very, very difficult from the point of view of boring people to death, because when you're in a room with live people, you have that serendipity going on. You have that emotional triggering from people saying hello to each other. You can't replicate that online. So, people have been organizing. I saw a Facebook post the other day saying we're organizing our 4-day event online. Can I have some ideas to do that? And my reaction was, well, don't do 4 days online, because people to sit there for 7 hours over, 28 hours over 4 days, just too much. Nobody wants to do that. You just can't replicate it.
Do you think then we'll see people designing events that are actually sessions broken down over much longer periods of time, giving people the almost episodic, like the Event Tech Talk Show, right? Is this now an event because it's regular? It comes up. People might, hopefully, then 10 people watching us have got it in their diaries. Is arguably that an event, or is that something totally different? Because people would argue that this is a broadcast, this is media, this is not necessarily an event. But I guess what you're saying there, James, is that you don't necessarily have to cram things into 4 days. That doesn't have to be your event design, right?
No, and I think you're right, Adam. It needs to be more episodic, especially when you've got a lot of content to get through. And, in terms of, say, internal, I'll go back to the sales kickoff idea, you could do that for an hour a day for breakfast over the space of a week and give them like a half day's experience kind of thing. So we are entering the realms of broadcast, but we're entering the realms of participative broadcast. So people can actually engage with each other. For example, on this platform, we've just got some very basic engagement kind of tools in terms of the comments being made and the questions. But you can have something a lot more bells and whistles to that, but it's still a broadcast. And I think if you go back to the broadcast industry and you look at something like America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. The participation really is the hashtag. That's the intermediation device that brings the audience at home together to the people in the studio and the broadcaster themselves, and then the social feeds that follow that. So we're using a very, very similar kind of arrangement for these online events. So you can say that we are really becoming, in a way, broadcasters.
Do you think the same, Dahlia, or have you got some different opinions on that?
Absolutely. I think the same. So here's the thing. Everybody's talking about Zoom fatigue. Not Zoom fatigue. It's being bored to death from your talking heads. And you guys know this. It's not about like being on screen on Zoom. It's about the content. It's about the delivery, and it's about an engagement plan. So are you playing Candy Crush on the side? You have did you just register yourself for 3 different events and have different screens up, and you're like hearing it in the background and saying, yeah, I'm there, take a selfie with another Zoom screen with everybody tiled on it? That is not it. The part about it is, Adam, to your point, this is an event, and it is going to get on people's calendars. It's going to be consistent because it has a goal. The mission has to be stated. The stakeholders have to be identified. This is going to be for event organizers that want to reset what they're doing, right? This is not for exhibitors. For exhibitors and for people that want B2B leads, this is not the event for them. So, for example, pretend CES had one part about content virtually for the 150,000 people. But what if they had their exhibitors having storefronts open 365? That is okay. Because right now the beauty of this is the virtual and hybrid world, you are not married to start and end dates anymore. And this actually is mind-blowing for event organizers and trade show organizers as we know them. They go by start and end dates. And that's what, for them to have that internal discussion with the stakeholders internally, it's a hard thing. That's where we spend most of our time, giving them the talking points to take to their C-suite, or giving them the talking points to take to their sponsor sales. You're not selling a 6-foot table and a garbage can anymore. Guess what? You need to actually talk to them and say, you're going to give me $10,000. What do you want in return? Do you want a storefront for 365? So we need to reset all of that. An event is not one-offs anymore. It's broadcasting. This is why we binge on Netflix, right? Yeah. This is why we look forward to season 5.2 of Lucifer, because we know what we're getting into. And you commit. This is a commitment, and it has to be both ways. So
yeah. And we have a comment here from Elena Marson, who agrees with you. She thinks that the length of a virtual event is one of the key components when designing any digital experience. And I think, like you said, Dahlia, you have to come back from the objective. You don't have to necessarily... There are some principles. It's good to give people start dates and end dates and times because it allows them to fit in that calendar. But if we're talking to a community that's there and connected all year round, we can bring new events in, new types of events, new moments, just moments in time, right? There could be just one single networking event around a bigger event that's the week before. And I think, to be fair to the team at Swapcard, they tried to leverage things like Clubhouse, didn't they, to kind of start those conversations for small micro tribes of people to kind of okay, we're going to start talking about this prior to the event. That arguably in itself was another event as an extension of that bigger event. Exactly. So we've been quite critical up to now. All the things you shouldn't do, but not everybody. I'm sure everybody's been seeing lots of things they shouldn't do or experience themselves. Dahlia, I'm going to start with you. Have you got an example of an event that you've either helped produce, helped to organise, attended, that you thought was a really good way of participating from an attendee perspective or for building it out for attendees? Is there anything that sticks out of your mind, and why does that stick out in your mind?
So a couple. One was taking a client who had a face-to-face with very high-level sponsors and exhibitors that paid a lot of money for lead gen, for the handshakes, for the conversations. And we turned that, instead of a 5-day event, we helped them turn the concept itself into have your content be a couple of days, and then have the next week be the B2B, exchange. So that worked really well because it was focused. I attended Web Summit, and Web Summit was the bomb. I know people liked and wanted to be in Portugal. I get that. But one thing that they did was, it was jam-packed, so that's one. But the other thing is, they surprised and delighted their attendees quite a bit. And we cannot forget to do that. Yes, I did do sangrias with drag queens in Portugal, and it was kick-ass. So you need to not forget that. You laugh, but it was the bomb. The other thing is, they had speed dating. So you were able to be matchmade with others that had your interests, and just get on video chat like for 2 minutes and connect that way. That's a great thing to do, especially for first timers. Everybody has to understand the surge of registration that happened last year, where they were like worried about registration. You have to figure out what you're going to do with that new audience, because they do not have the luxury of knowing an Adam and a James and the hugs in the corridors of the aisles of, IMAX and so forth. So that is something to take in consideration. So the surprise and delight, the matchmaking, the networking. Then Adweek 2020 did a fantastic thing where they took all the content that they had and created TV channels by category of content and put it on TV, put it on the Roku,
right,
where people were able to just do it from their couch. They were couch surfing, but they were consuming content. And that is one thing that people need to take a look at. If you were not designing or creating content before for your events for different audiences, that is your linchpin right there. That is what's going to get people coming over and over to your different events, to this episodes, for example, to your ETL, for example. So those three examples.
Great examples. I've been to Web Summit myself, and funnily enough, my first experience, I flew out there just, it was tech. I saw the odd company that was event related, and they were quite early leaders with the event app and the matchmaking on the event app. It was basic, but it did the job. And that allowed me to connect up with, I think, like 12 or 13 different people that were related to the events industry. Took them onto WhatsApp, and then, this was when it was back in Dublin, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of Dublin having Guinness and having a crack. So it's, Web Summit have done some great things. And I think, what I've taken away from what you said there is just breaking up those elements and focusing them on each individual element rather than trying to shoehorn them all into one experience. Do you guys think that's one of the biggest mistakes we've seen is people trying to do too much in one go?
Yeah. And I think Dahlia's point about sort of splitting out those micro experiences that make people, it's like going into a sweet shop and say a bit of that, and a bit of that at this particular moment in time is really key, because that experience scape that you're trying to design has got to appeal to the 5 senses. So what we can do is we can use the sight and sound in terms of the content delivery, and people using their phone maybe, or a second screen to add the touch. We're seeing a lot of festivalization in our events. Female event planners just talked about they were all singing online in the end. Again, that's a festivalization aspect, or delivering Just Eat vouchers, or cocktail making and comedy and things like that. And I think that delivering those micro moments or micro experiences within that that bigger experience is key. So I like what Dahlia is saying. And I think you also have to look at the servicescape aspect. So just a simple example, the Baltic Nordic Event Awards that I attended, back in July last year was a very, very well-run event on a platform by a Russian company called Eventicious. But if you looked at the screen, it had different camera angles from a studio-based idea, but then they had polling, they had sponsors on the screen, they had other messages. So that the entire look of the screen was not just like we see now with like 3 talking heads. There were different functions on the screen that you could interact with at the same time. So again, those little micro experiences that you get hold of at any point in time. But the main the main screen was always focused in on the award ceremony itself. So, Dahlia, I think we're talking a lot of sense for once.
Well, you guys are disappointing me. You said you were going to disagree with each other before we came on it.
So here, okay, fine. You want that? All right, let's do this. I do challenge the anybody that's listening to us. We need different terminology. We need to sort of, and I'll go like on a limb here. We need to what if we get rid of the word event? What happens then? What do you replace it with, as well as, what's the definitions that people need to come up with that makes sense for their own organization? It doesn't have to be a general statement for the whole industry. This is where we need to have, those professionals figure out their business models, their organization, what those goals are. Because I know everybody's sick and tired of Zoom, but like, honestly, you can we have one client that did 70 Zoom like meetings last year instead of their annual. That was their pipeline for this year's hybrid event. So they were able to gain all that audience. They wouldn't have been able to do that. And that takes a lot of engagement planning, like James was talking about. But do you want to define a Zoom meeting as an event or not? So this is I need people to like stretch out of their comfort zone and not take a look at technology first, because like Paulina was saying, because Paulina is female event planners, and I know that she got hacked yesterday and Zoom bombed, as they say. So you can't take only a look at technology and design within. It has to be totally, totally different. Redefine what an event is.
Yeah,
it's a really hard point, though, isn't it? And it's one of the questions I've got here. Like, where in the process should the technology come, though? Because there's definitely the pressure to get the venue in place, right? And people like to work with the venue because that gives them an idea of what they can even do with the space. Like, okay, so now I've booked the Soho Hotel or the New York whatever. Like, once you've got that in place, you can kind of start to build the event out because you can design certain features around certain areas. But with technology, that seems to be, in some cases, the death strike. It's like you go down this route of like, well, this ticks all the boxes, it's got everything, and then we want to do this, and it doesn't quite fit the bill. Or it's a battle tank for a birthday party kind of scenario, and you've overspec'd it, overspent, it's overcomplicated, and you just Zoom. Is there anything wrong with Zoom? I don't think there's anything wrong with Zoom, personally. It
works perfectly, and I think that I think it depends on the organisation itself. So if you think about what the difference between an association or corporate brand, they have these organisational objectives. It's about sales with a brand. And with an association, it's about membership value and engagement. So what they need to start thinking is that those are our headline kind of organizational objectives. How does that move down into the event objective area? And what might be our technology stack to do that? But then they have the luxury of budget. If you're just a one-man band, small business, and you want to do an event every 3 months, you're probably going to have to go for the talking heads option because it's probably the most reasonable and make the best job of it. So it all depends on the business itself, the budgets it has available, but then again, where the users are. So if, for example, I'm a small a business that deals in publishing about e-games, I'll probably broadcast out on Twitch, for example, and use something like StreamYard to broadcast to there because it's cheap and cheerful. But if I'm the Association of E-Gamers, I might choose, something like Canopy, where, I can have the AR stadium and I can do something really bells and whistles with that kind of design.
Dahlia, where are you advising people kind of start looking at platform and technology? Where in the process do you think they should think about it?
So my advice is don't look at platforms on your own. And this is not a plug for like, hey, bring in, Dahlia or bring in James, for example, to help you take a look at it. But it honestly is right now, if any lesson we learn, you need to collaborate with others. And you should not be putting the whole burden on yourself to try to figure out whether this tech platform is for you or not. Devil's advocate, not every platform needs to serve every single event you put together. So like, if you have an annual, you might want to go big with a platform, et cetera, that, has the capabilities for showcase and da-da-da. If it's a sales, if it's a sales summit, why not do it like in a VR type of or 3D type of environment, like an expo, for example, or one of those community type of things. But the most important thing is don't try to do due diligence on 75 platforms on your own. It will cause you to drink so much you won't believe it. Right? And the other thing is, the tech companies are doing their best, but they will dish you everything. And then they will leave you to like try to like take it apart, what works for you, what doesn't. That's the other part of it. And honestly, to have someone like, navigate those waters, that's not a bad thing. Because like you said, I think a lot of people try to do so much. And now they're like, what about our budgets? Because they relied on monies that were already spent on a face-to-face, mind you, that were shifted over a year. Now they have to start fresh. So guess what? You not only need to make due diligence on the platform, what about your marketing? What about your sales? Because that skill set for like your different types of events, that needs help as well. And we see this often, it's like, oh, I have this virtual beautiful thing. Let me put a kit together, show them where the branding can be. And then, exhibitors and sponsors are not happy. And then what? You won't get them back.
I think that's go ahead, James.
Can I just flip that about the kind of platforms and choosing it? Because we've developed this in the technology marketplace. We've developed this bubble over the last year and a half, and I think the valuation of Hopin is testament to that at 4.65 billion. But as people go back to live or to virtual, we're going to see less use of the back to hybrid. We're going to see less use of the virtual, I think. But then that kind of begs the question of how the supplier is going to price themselves now. Because Dahlia and I, a year ago, we had a discussion, or just after the lockdown, about what people were charging for creating virtual events. So do you remember, Dahlia?
Yeah.
Some of the crazy pricing that was going around. And, we had this discussion, and then I think that there has to be a discussion now about how do we price flexibly so that if I am a small company, I'm doing 10 events a year, but I only need Zoom for 2, and I want something like a Gamescape like Expo for one of them, and then I want to use Events Case for another 3 of them. How's that all going to work instead of me paying for a whole year's worth of a subscription? So I think the technology industry, in terms of the way they look at their pricing, is also going to have an impact on how we design events going forward as well.
Well, on that point, I think you both have points that are kind of connected there, and I've seen it a lot. Dahlia, you obviously do this as a professional service to organisers to weave them through the platforms, and to James's point, probably tell them what's a fair price, what's an overinflated price, what's bundled features that you don't necessarily need, or even more so things that are not part of the proposal from the supplier and need to be part of the proposal from the supplier. They're left on the table. And I'm seeing many more organizations or individuals set back. Ashanti Event Mind Pro, these guys are doing it for their customers. We've got Arvi from Smart Tech Business Solutions, who he's doing it. And then you end up getting into the helping them actually go through the process and deliver the event. But I think it's really interesting what you said, James, because that's where some of the value comes from, working with individuals who know the landscape, because they can fast track you to the right solution and make sure you don't get burnt with price or walk away from the table without actually needing something that's not part of the packaging you should actually be paying for. So I think it's really interesting. But, pricing models and things like that, budget does come into it, right? When it comes to a choice of platform, maybe that's where some of the event design has to kind of maybe go a little by the wayside, because Event Tech Live, would we be able to afford the $500,000 3D, Unreal tournament event? It's up there, isn't it? It's more than some physical venue costs, and I think that's one of the challenges people have got of actually designing hybrid events as well, is going back to having a physical venue cost and also a digital venue cost now.
I mean, keep in mind that when you bring in technology platforms, especially when you bring in multiple and they're all integrated, or there's a band-aid between all of them, and we've all been there, the onboarding of your event participants in order for them to maximize their experience is higher. And that is something that you would need to put budget towards, because you cannot just design this amazing gamescape and realize that your attendees don't know how to navigate it. Or you can't design an exhibitor hall or product showcase hall or storefronts and just leave it up to the sponsors and exhibitors to go do their own schedules, video chats, etc. It won't work that way. But imagine if you come to a point where the first things when it comes to event design, that your goals are, one, to create the serendipitous or whatever, chances of people to meet, like-minded or not. That is number one. And that goes back to the engagement that James was talking about. I don't know about the 5 senses, because I still don't know how to get that yet. And then the other thing is, you need to spend money on content creation and more money on marketing, because your cookie cutter, your email campaigns, your marketing team is not going to be able to sustain how to get those attendees and those stakeholders part of it anymore. So that's a reset altogether. That's where the budget should be.
Yeah. So we've got an interesting comment here from Phil as well. He's saying on-demand modules will be the way forward to help with event size fluctuation. Do you guys see that as being a bigger part of the event design? That ecosystem of right now we've got all of this content. This needs to live and breathe somewhere. Does that just continue to live on the event platform, or do you actually take that and create kind of micro on-demand events around certain topics and subjects? I know William Thomas at Gallus Events does that. He takes his main content and then splits that out into on-demand events and things. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with Phil?
Yeah,
I think so, because what he's doing, what that idea does, it allows you to engage with your community in ways that is personal to them. They want to know about that particular subject at that moment in time, and then they can access that. So in a way, without saying this is your personal choice, they are making a personal choice. That's personalization. And I think also it's about engagement throughout the year. So, you might have lots of content you have from Event Tech Live, and you drip feeding that out as the year goes on, Adam. And then so people can either personally choose to watch it or not. But then you're engaging with your community on an ongoing basis, and you're building a community through that as well, because you're going to get new signups, and people that love the content are going to be advocates for you. So in terms of those relationships that you're building in the community, it's a good thing, I think. Well done, Phil. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a magic word right there, which is community. Everybody's building a community. So therefore, is that a different platform?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, community, and this is probably a whole nother episode around just purely around community. There's a gentleman called Ashley Friedman who's, his definition of community is actually quite small. But I think from an organizer perspective, we're thinking about communities as these monolithic, mega kind of 10,000 people engaging with each other and talking with each other on a platform and stuff. And his opinion is actually more different. It's actually a community could be 6 or 10 people around a subject. My opinion, although I would argue that we are trying to foster the infrastructure in place around Event Tech Live for those conversations to happen, my event community is actually you guys. It's the people tuning in today. It's the people commenting. It's you, Dahlia. It's you, James. It's the lifeblood, the heart. It's even my exhibitors and my sponsors. Those guys that come every single year and we high five and we have beers and all that kind of stuff. For me, that's actually my event community. But I appreciate we have a semi-transient community that's interested in our content and also wants to engage with those individuals that I mentioned in that community as well. So community is an interesting one. It's the terminology that we're using at the moment as an industry to try and describe connecting people up all year round. But I wonder if it'll change somewhat.
I don't think it will.
No.
Probably not, because you wanted to ditch the word event earlier, and that's not going to happen either, Dahlia.
Want to bet? I'll bet you on that one. Here's what I bet. I bet there's going to be an influx of communities, not the hybrid models. And based in the communities is where you're going to have your mini experiences. And I did not use the word event. Okay.
Yeah. So on that note, then, we have a Facebook comment from a user we don't know. Do apologise. Wish we knew who you were. By all means, type another comment in while I'm reading this out. I'll bring it up. But can you give an example then of an event that's pivoted well to build a community? Is that even a thing yet? Have we seen that?
I personally can't do that because most of the events I've attended have been run before, so they already have a basic community around them. I don't know, Dahlia, have you got my...
So in my opinion, the first one to do this, or the first type of persona that it would serve them well is... hi, Martin.
Martin. Martin.
The first persona that would benefit from this, if they think of it strategically, are associations. Because member dues, I'm sorry, are not going to be what they used to be.
No.
And the face-to-face and the one-offs, not going to be what it used to be. And if they are able to successfully create a community or communities, micro communities within that space, their own space, and really go to, everybody wants to belong for a reason, either for education, peer-to-peer, or just for sanity purposes. Build the community, then build the content, build the networking, and build the experiences, the content exchange around that. And that is what is going to happen. So, like, for example, you're asking for examples of how this has happened. Well, look at SwapCard. They built a community. And so that's one. And you also have HubSpot. So Inbound, their community is thriving after they went virtual. They should not let go of that. They will not let go of that. But this is a different skill set. This is a different mindset. Your C-suite probably think it's too fluffy. This is not like what they see is, a trade show bringing in $5 million, right? This is where you have to reset the whole entire conversation.
I agree.
But there are some existing examples, and arguably the element of this community coming together takes place online before the festival. Download Festival, which is run by one of the biggest organisers in the world, Live Nation, is known for, at the heart of that event, a very tightly knit community, which they've built the infrastructure for this community to connect up, make big decisions on the event. Like they're involved in how the event plays out, from the design changes to headline acts to even the food and catering. Like, this community is at the heart of it, and actually that community works really well because that community helps new people to learn and understand and get the best out of the event as well. So for me, as an event owner, I see our duty as the way to put the infrastructure in place and allow the community to do their own thing in the way that they want to. Now, that isn't going to be a C-suite tick box. That's going to be like, whoa, what do you mean we're going to let people do what they want? Like, we need to funnel them down this path and control it. But in terms of the building blocks, that's what Facebook's done, right? That's what Facebook have built infrastructure to be able to build groups and other ways of people coming together around ideas and thoughts. I think we kind of need to think about it that way from an event organizer's perspective.
But you can rely on your brand ambassadors to navigate the behaviors that you want them to do and be the ones that lead micro communities or target audiences within your micro communities. But that's part of the engagement plan that James was talking about. So I'll give him that one.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I'm aware of some organisers that are coming out with communities. Montgomery Events have built some around their food and beverage events, and Mike Seaman at Raccoon Events is building one around a really large community that he's got around running and fitness and that B2C crossover. And I think to Martin's point, we've not seen anything just right now because it's still new. Like, we're still coming out of the back end of delivering online events, looking towards delivering physical events again. I think the community aspect will come out, and great examples will come out over the next year or two, maybe a little bit longer, while people figure it out. The ones that I would watch are the people that already have communities and come into the event space. They're the ones to watch. Because they're coming in from a different... They're not interested in events being the primary driver. They just want events to be the thing that bring people, their community, together in moments in time. That's my opinion.
Well, isn't that why Clubhouse is like super hot right now? Because it's like a community builder. Oh, I saw that one.
I'm done with it already.
but okay, so I'm done with it too. I mean, but the reality of it is it gave us a holy shit moment. Holy shit, oh my God, you can have conversations. What if those conversations, you're building new communities, therefore it's new audiences, therefore you can bring them in, to your events, etc., and prolong the marketing or prolong the engagement plan, right? Before, during, after. The after parties we have, etc. The linchpin here is you have brand ambassadors. Those that are leading the rooms are part of your marketing plan. So you have to think that way. Like, you have to think a little bit different, but you cannot say, oh, I'm done with it. And then Adam will go, James, and say, hey, James, Dahlia, you go handle Clubhouse for me,
I'll come back to it when it's cool again.
The other thing about the online communities,
don't hold your breath.
The other thing about the online communities and those informal associations that some of these platforms are allowing to people, they are going to want to, at some point, turn those communities into a live experience, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to have these parameters of what that live experience is. And they're going to design around, this is what you need to do. That's the behavior we want at this live experience. Now, whether or not that informal come and go, pick and mix community is going to accept that is a debate that we'll probably have to have in the years down the line, because people are just at the moment joining these communities. They might be a core member, an advocate of that community, or they might just be joining it for tactical reasons to get one little snippet of information they need there and then. But I think these communities have implications for the design of live events later down the line. But notwithstanding, what we're talking about today is the design around digital events. And whilst you might have that community, it is going to be a lot easier in terms of geographic reach, for example, to engage that community. As long as you're sensitive to cultural differences, because you could be broadcasting that event around the world to countries where we have different religious sensitivities, We have different time zones. You know, there's a whole kind of thing in terms of those kind of global those global communities, really. Smaller geographic communities that are based, say, in London or the UK, one time zone, a general kind of cultural aesthetic is a lot easier to deal with than if you read exhibitions and you're having to do an event that was maybe in 4 regions at some point, and now it's just one region, is going to be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm conscious of time, guys.
What?
Have you seen Dahlia's glasses? Wow.
Yeah, they're spot on, those, but
Yeah.
there's one question that I would really like to finish off with. And I think it's the question that everybody's asking themselves right now. And it's from Elena again. What's the biggest challenge when we go to organise and design hybrid events? Wow.
James, you first.
Okay, so I think it's being able to provide the 2 different audiences. Oh, shall I make the hand movement again, Dahlia?
Yes, sir.
I'll let you do that.
Everybody now is going to ask about the hand movement about EWD. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, we do that. But it's a case of having experiences that are relevant to both audiences, where they can come together at some points in time, but then they go off and do their own thing in the virtual world or the live world. So walking the show floor and having that serendipitous, trying to do that in the virtual world is really, really, it's just not going to work. So then people can go off and do that, but then you should be providing your virtual audience with something equally as engaging. And I think that's the key with hybrid, is to make sure that you both have not an equal experience, but both those experiences are valued to the same extent by those different audiences.
Dahlia, where are you at?
So I think people are trying really hard to try to, again, replicate the same experience from a live event to the virtual audience. I don't know if you necessarily need to do that. I say challenge yourself and take advantage of the opportunities where there could be something different for each type of audience. This whole hand movement means something, because there are points where you can bring them together, and you can bring them together through content. You can bring them together through even social media, like taking pictures together and matchmaking. You can do the matchmaking. That's perfect. You can also bring them together where it's almost like a buddy system. If James is in Barcelona at IBTM World, for example, I'm in Boston, he should have me on his phone and take me around to meet people, etc. So there you go, dude. That is all us. If you guys are drinking at a bar in Barcelona, you're taking me with you. That's that part. But the honest truth is, you have to be prepared to spoon feed your audiences what you are creating. You can't leave it to an email. You can't leave it to a tweet. Can't leave it to a Facebook post and think that they're going to act accordingly.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that engagement plan and that promotion and that messaging is spot on.
And how do you communicate that engagement plan?
Exactly.
Companies like Masters of Moderation, the Netherlands-based company, I shouldn't say Dutch. That's wrong. They do a really great job at that, virtually and live, and that's what you need. Or you need the MC virtually, you need the MC live, you need them to be communicating with each other so they can get the swimming movement or whatever.
That will be an event industry thing now. This is how we describe hybrid events. I have a slightly difference of opinion, and not that I disagree with anything that you guys have just said, but I think the biggest challenge to us trying to organise and design hybrid events will be the pressure to focus back on the physical, not given the opportunity to try things, not being given the budget, and to pay lip service to the digital experience. I think that is the biggest challenge. Part of me says it's experience, but you can't gain experience if you're not given the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a large proportion, and I hate to say it, Dahlia, you mentioned these associations earlier that will go back to the revenue drivers of physical events and bringing people together and be like, let's just drop that because it's hard work, or we'll point a camera at the stage and put it online. And that's what was done before when it came to hybrid events. It was like, well, the content's available online. If people want to watch it, off they go. I think that's the biggest challenge, that people will focus too sharply, too quickly back on the physical event for the most part, and the digital side will drop.
But what we have seen, Adam, interestingly enough, we saw festivalization in live, and we did continue that into the virtual realm, and we do have people who are being sent Just Eat vouchers or meals or games or those kinds of things, or the Song Division sing-along corporate anthem type design activities. So I think that there is still room for that. But again, like you say, it comes back to the budget. It also comes back to how seriously the people that have facilitated those communities are going to shove them towards the live and give a second-class experience to the virtual audiences.
I think it also comes down to the type of event. I think, let's be honest about it, you mentioned it earlier, Dahlia, is a company online really an exhibitor? Let's be honest about it, does the trade show format just work so much better physically that's where the core value is, so that's where the focus? Whereas conferences or content-led, it's people want speed and access and ease. They don't necessarily want to travel for 3 hours to a conference for one session. True. Because that's so much time out of their day, and it's a really slow way to access information in a digital world where you've got most information on the end of a Google search.
And so devil's advocate again, because I can, and you're running out of time, is what if hybrid is not for everybody?
Yep.
And what if someone says, hey, you know what? My content portion is virtual. My B2B and my trade show component is going to be hub and spoke, regional. Deal.
I had this conversation with somebody the other day that the learning and the business element could exist online. And then the thing that brings people together is all the cool bits around that event that you go to. The beers in Barcelona, the after parties, the Surf Summit at Web Summit. And actually that's where a lot of the quality time, the relationship building, the networking, the deals are struck actually in a lot of those environments, the big stuff. Yeah. That's actually, you could actually just separate all of that out and focus on that rather than kind of shoehorning it around the content, the education.
And actually, for sanity purposes and for organizers not to be ugly crying in the bathroom and drinking themselves silly, that is an easier thing to do. Like, they won't have to do 3 different proposals or like 2 different proposals and then say, oh my God, look at the monies. Yeah, it's going to cost you a lot.
But, it just comes back down to just going back to the census thing that Dahlia's not getting. And we'll go offline and talk about this. But, the thing is, you cannot replicate, if you think about business events. So we talk about a Fashion Week designer catwalk show. You cannot replicate that online. It has to be live. That ready-to-wear collection, you want to go and touch and feel it afterwards. The same with a motor show. You need to get in the vehicle. Just doing it on a pair of VR glasses and seeing the inside of the vehicle is not like smelling the leather.
I differ.
Vegan leather is available, James.
Yeah, but that's what I think.
You're absolutely right. It's it'd be like tuning into a remote birthday party, isn't it? It's just not going to be the same.
No.
But the question is, for those that can't attend, should that be a reason not to do that? Because we've got to think about accessibility and stuff.
Different and offer something that's unique to the virtual value proposition that you're not going to get in the live event.
I think there will be an audience that will grow up to say, virtually, I want that fashion show in my Oculus.
Yeah.
And I can even test out watches or look at a pair of shoes from my couch because they've been on their couch for 365 playing Animal Crossing on Nintendo Switch. and I know that for a reason. So,
well, on that bombshell of the Nintendo Switch and VR, guys, it's been really good to have you both on. You've both got similar opinions, but you've both got conflicting ideas as well. Dahlia, I know you come at it from a much more emotional gut feeling side of things, and James, you're much more methodical and thought out. But before we go, James, you've got something coming up that I guess this community or the people watching should know about, right?
Yeah, I'm hosting an event on the 7th of April on the Expo platform. It's actually a tribute to Julia Rutherford-Silvers, who event designer, author, academic. She wrote one of the Bibles on events management called Professional Event Coordination. And we've got an amazing lineup of speakers talking about her 6 A's, which are anticipation, arrival, atmospherics, appetite, activities, and amenities. And in fact, Dahlia's speaking at that event on amenities. And that's on the 7th of April. So check out the social media channels. And it'd be great if you guys could join us.
Where can people register, James, or check it out?
They can register on, if you search LinkedIn for tribute to Julia Rutherford-Silvers, you'll find the event on there. And love to have you all along.
Awesome. Well, that's the end of episode 4 of the Event Tech Talk Show. Thank you to James and Dahlia for coming on. If you have any questions, at us and tweet at us on with the hashtag Event Tech Talks, and we'll come back to you. Thanks for everybody who's engaged with questions and comments today as well, and we'll see you in the next episode.